so excited to have you. We are here in Studio B at SRQ Magazine, and we are starting up our podcast series for the Women Who Roar. And today we're here with Melissa Larkin-Skinner, the CEO of Centerstone of Florida. And it's just such a great pleasure to have you here on a Friday afternoon, right before the holidays. And I wish the viewers could see what you're wearing top to bottom. She's rock and roll. She's 100% rock and roll today. I love it. I love it.
I kind of am, I guess. I wasn't even thinking about it. Actually, it's a little retro. 80s is how I look at it.
80s, the best decade ever, right?
I agree. Anyway, it's my pleasure to be here and my honor. So thank you.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I first wanted to ask you a little bit about your work. Tell us a little bit about what Centerstone of Florida is doing now, and certainly this last 2 years have been a big upheaval and pivot time, and I can only imagine, especially with the services that you provide, you've had to sort of rethink everything, and the need definitely has been there. You want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Absolutely. So at Centerstone of Florida, we do mental health, addiction treatment, and prevention. Right. We've been doing it it'll be 67 years next year.
That's incredible.
So 66 years, in the community. And what we've seen in the last 2 years in particular is a huge increase in demand. Yeah. So just one example is we went from getting 7,000 calls per month to 10 or 11,000 calls per month. So that gives you just a little indication of how high the demand is.
So tell us a little bit more about, those calls that are coming in, who are they coming in from, generally in terms of audience or age groups in the area?
People of all ages, and it's either the people who need help or looking for counseling or looking to see a psychiatrist or more than that, or their loved ones, family members, sometimes neighbors, sometimes coworkers that are worried about them.
Right.
So, yeah.
A lot of different groups. Certainly in having had conversations with a lot of individuals, students in high school in particular, for a feature that we ran in this past December, understanding just how much the world changed for them in terms of what they expected for the day-to-day, all those things they were looking forward to, are we going to have a prom? Do we have graduation? It's a drive-by graduation. It's a different thing. And feeling the isolation, even though the technology technically is there. Yeah. Can you speak to that like disconnect and that feeling of isolation? Sure.
I actually think that COVID disproportionately affected our youth, and it concerns me for their future because I think it's a thing that will have an impact throughout their lives, and it behooves us in the community to help them. And I don't think get past it is the right word, but find a way to be stronger because of it. I very much believe that we face what comes at us in life, and we're going to feel depressed, and we're going to feel angry, and we're going to feel sad, and we're going to feel frustrated and disappointed, and all of those things are normal human emotions. But I also believe that every event, every experience we have in life, and the people that we experience can help make us stronger. So what I believe is if we give our kids, especially the right supports, but also adults too. I mean, it affected everyone in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, no one was immune. So if we give people the right supports, they're going to be stronger because of COVID. Throughout history, terrible things have happened. But as humanity moves forward, we get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's just that life has a way of surprising us. So one of the things, I think technology has been a wonderful thing. In my field, it helped us connect to people without them having to come into a clinic. And so they were able to get the services they needed. And we never shut down any services. That was incredibly important and my number one goal.
That must have been difficult.
It was difficult, but we did it.
Yeah.
We did it. And now we have a hybrid, so we have more services available via telehealth than we ever had before. But we also still have all of our in-person where we go in the community, we go in the schools, go in the hospitals where people come to our clinics. So I think in some ways it ensured a connection with others and with services people needed. Right. But there's still that element of it's not the same as being in the room. It's not the same. If I was on Zoom with you, I wouldn't feel the same connection. I just wouldn't because human beings need each other, and they need an authentic connection with each other.
You speak about the long-lasting impact of these past 2 years in our youth, and I think about a lot of the interns that we've had through our doors, and the younger generation definitely has become much more reliant on the technology, and it is great. I mean, it's 24/7. You can reach out to the world and tell them, what you ate for dinner or whatnot. But at the same time, their comfort level with being in person and utilizing those social skills and being able to read how someone is feeling or connecting to you, they have not necessarily had as much chance to practice that.
It's very true.
How do you see us helping them sort of connect some of those dots and get into situations that are definitely outside of their comfort zone, maybe even before the pandemic, but certainly through the pandemic, it's been reinforced, and get them really sort of comfortable about building that community for themselves, that support community?
So for those who aren't comfortable, I mean, there are those who were doing it all along, and then COVID, and then it kind of put a damper on it.
Right, it was different.
Right,
Changed up.
and it for them it was a loss. Mm-hmm. For those who maybe were in their formative years where they needed that connection but weren't making it, and maybe they're the ones that are struggling perhaps with making the connection or being comfortable. I think introducing it slowly and having supports in place, and really just something I absolutely hated when I was in school was role plays. I hated them. I hated them. I don't really like to be the center of attention, especially back then. So it was hard. But at this point in my life, I have seen the value of them over and over and over for me as well as for others. So even being able to role play a social situation or setting up a social situation that is safe in some way by controlling who the people are that are in that situation.
Yeah,
So
I might ask you for a little more on that, because we are getting ready now to put together some of the programming for SMARTgirl this coming April, and we're working with 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls, and a lot of the workshops are interactive, and we're rethinking how we engage this year in the new norm. So I might come back to you and ask you a little bit more about how we could frame maybe role playing, even though it was not your favorite thing. It was probably a really good thing.
It's actually a really great thing.
Yeah. So I guess that leads me into the question. You spent so much time in this field, passionately in this field, and matriculated, and now you're the CEO. So there's a lot of new, and the operations and running, the engine to make sure it's delivering and connecting. What's been the hardest thing to kind of leave behind or to pick up new as you move into that role?
Leaving behind's the hardest thing. But I've been doing it 27 years at the same organization. And one of the reasons I've stayed at the same organization is the fact that I've been able to move up to do new things. For me, it was more about doing new things because I get bored.
You had mentioned, and we say this a lot, it's lonely at the top. And so I was curious, for you, tell us more about what that feels like, the moments where you, how does that actually manifest?
Right. So for me, a lot of self-doubt. So so I've been CEO 5 years. It was 5 years yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank
Happy
you.
anniversary.
So for 3.5 years, I had quite a bit of self-doubt. There are things that happen that I've always had this sort of belief, if I could say the right thing, the perfect thing, make the perfect decision, wear the perfect outfit, do everything perfect, make, that everything would be okay. And we would have everything we need. So just as for instance, going to the legislator, advocating for money, to legislators, advocating for money and policy changes. I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure I said and did the right things. And believing that I could exert some sort of control.
Politics.
Right? That's just one example. And it wasn't until about 1.5 years ago, I had a moment, a long moment. And it resulted really in is almost uncorking a wine bottle. All that pressure.
Can I ask about the moment?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm gonna share it.
All right. I just didn't want to,
I'm getting there.
You get into the cork bottle. I thought, well, sometimes,
I hit like a wall, and I couldn't stuff that stuff down where I was trying to control everything and be that perfect CEO, that perfect person, the perfect advocate, the perfect therapist, the perfect boss, leader, whatever, right? I had a moment. It was actually a Friday night. And I can't really remember the details of what led up to it, but I just started crying and I sobbed. 4 hours straight. My husband says 6 hours. I think it was 4 hours. Couldn't talk. And I don't do that. I don't like to cry. It's silly. I'm a therapist and you'd think I'd be okay with it, but it's just about my own
personal
pressure.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like I could be perfect enough, no matter what. And anyway, that moment was important because the cork came out. All that stuff that I'd been harboring and controlling within
pushing
myself.
Down and,
Shoving down and keeping a lid on came out, and it allowed me to gain some clarity. So after that, it was a process of gaining more and more clarity about the situation and about my real ability to control things. I'm in a much different space today than I was then, in that I think for the first time in my life, in the last year and a half, I don't try to control things.
Is that hard?
It is sometimes. Like, I can revert back to it pretty easily. But I take a different stance. And I'm an optimist, too. So it was just more about me and the pressure I put on me, not everybody else or anything else. It's that self-doubt, but also just that pressure to perform. And it's because I wanted to do it. I'm my own worst enemy, absolutely. So that's a little bit of introspection and clarity. And I just have gained more and more clarity about what it is I really can control. And so last Friday, I actually gave the commencement speech at the SCF graduation.
Fantastic. We just had Carol Probstfeld here for the last
She's
podcast.
Awesome. Yep.
Fantastic lady.
So I followed her. She spoke, and I followed her. And that's what I spoke about, really, was we can't control our emotional response to things. As human beings, we're going to have an emotional response. We absolutely cannot control that. It just happens. We can't control what happens to us. We can't control what happens in life. What we can control is how we respond to it. So that's what I really focus on. And I know that if I did everything I could possibly think of to try to get funding and they still say no, I had no control over that. It wasn't something that I did or didn't do. It is something beyond my ability to control. Other people make those decisions. And there are so many other factors and variables that I don't even know about in that process. So I do as much as I can, what I can, but maintain the knowledge that ultimately they can still say no.
And that's their control.
Yes.
And at some point, that path where you are preparing everything, presenting and engaging, then there's the door. And on the other side of the door is where they need to come to that place. And hopefully you two meet in the middle. But so, what a breakthrough.
Oh, it was huge.
But that self-awareness must have opened up new, I would imagine, openness to taking risk, openness to change, and to really put yourself out there in a different way than sort of putting yourself out there and expecting a specific result or return or
probably
that pressure. Yeah,
that's a good way to describe it. It didn't change me a whole lot, the way I interact in the world. It changed more my perception of what I was doing and whether or not I was being successful or... And I've always been a bit of a risk taker, this just allows me to maybe push a little bit further because I know that I can't control it. It may still not turn out the way I want it, but I also am very adaptable, so I can change direction quickly if I need to. So those are the things. I just watch and I kind of shrug. I do this shrug. I can do it physically or mentally, where I'm like, well,
shrug,
if this
like
doesn't
that.
work out, then we'll try something else.
You need to teach me the mental shrug. I like that. It's not out in the open, but you're inside.
It's inside,
you're thinking,
I'm shrugging.
It's happening right now.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So how do you share that optimism that you have with your team?
Oh, that actually is easy for me most of the time. Yeah. Now, those 3.5 years, there were times I had, like, I couldn't. I needed them, and they were fantastic, by the way, to just sort of drag me up some days. Yeah. But I'm able to share it partly because of sharing the stories, just sharing stories from my life, stories from the lives of other people that have shared with me, and they do the same thing. And it's I like to believe that I create psychological safety. Only they know whether I do or not. I like to believe I do. I just put myself out there.
Yeah, I could tell that about you.
I am who I am, and this is how I operate in the world, and I always keep my eye on, not the prize, you could say the prize, but I always keep my eye on why I do this. When we're talking from a professional standpoint, I do this work because I love it. I do it because I believe in it. I do it because I know we can make a difference in people's lives so that they lead the lives they want to lead.
That's huge. You come at it with passion. It's interesting hearing you talk about the pathway to becoming CEO and then the breakthrough you had. And I think a lot of younger girls, when they see leadership and they see somebody in that position, there's not always an understanding of how they got there, and that it's following. Ultimately, you said earlier you started as a volunteer with the organization, starting with the passion and then adapting and expanding that through to the point. And so I think it's so important especially for younger girls, to hear that pathway. It's not, I'm applying for this and I'm going to go do this, but finding something in yourself that you are very passionate about, because that seems to, for you, have led into this great place that you are right now.
I learned a long time ago I have to have passion for my work, or I will be bored, senseless, and very unhappy. So it has worked out. Yeah. I've taken advantage of pretty much every opportunity offered to learn something new, and it didn't always mean more money or a promotion. A lot of times it was just taking on a new project. Right. And I said yes. No matter what my fears were, I said yes. And I have sort of this weird thing where I believe in myself and my ability, but that doesn't mean self-doubt doesn't creep in. So whoever listens to this, I want to make sure that they understand that it's not that I don't believe in myself, because I absolutely believe in myself. Yeah. But that doesn't mean self-doubt doesn't creep in. No. What matters is then, what do I do with that self-doubt? Do I let it make me stop? Do I change course? Do I lay down in a fetal position and sleep the day away?
Or the week, or the month, or the
weekend?
Or the weekend.
Do I
right?
rest? Yeah. So I think that's really what's important for people to hear. I've always been this person that's like, okay, I don't want to bother other people with my stuff. I'm going to handle my stuff. I know how to do it. I'm a therapist.
Right.
It's arrogant, and I didn't mean to be arrogant that way, but I don't know what it is.
It's always
I don't want to bother other people.
Right. You want to try to take care of it yourself.
Exactly.
Find the solution. So we're about to segue into our second segment, where we're going to be inviting Madison to join us, and she is a former SMARTgirl in her younger years, and she's going to come back and join us and take over my spot here and do the interview from her perspective. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about Melissa as a 17-year-old. Where were you?
I was having a lot of fun.
You were having a lot of fun? No doubt.
No, I was a good girl. I never did drugs, never drank. At 17, I was I had a lopsided haircut like I do today, although you can't tell because it's gotten so long. But I kind of reverted back a year ago and did the whole asymmetrical haircut from the 80s.
It's a good look for you.
At 17, I had that, but my hair was brown and a little bit curlier. The curls kind of loosened as I went white. But I had a lot of friends. I was actually with the person I married. We met in high school.
In high school?
Yeah.
Wow.
Our 27th anniversary is coming up.
Oh my goodness.
In a week or two. 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
So Melissa at 17 was at Southeast High School in Manatee County and having a ball, to be honest with you.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm glad you've never lost sight of that exuberant 17-year-old. And we're about to introduce a 17-year-old who's come to meet you today, Madison, and she's from Venice High. So why don't we take a quick break and we'll be right back as Madison joins us.
Sure.
Thanks.
One of the things that I always come back to is the lesson of when you're a peacemaker and a people pleaser, when you learn that you're not going to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. That is a huge life lesson. And as you move into leadership, if that's something that you're doing, you're never going to please people, and so 100% of the people. And people try to do that, and it's an epic fail every time. And so when I really unpack why I would try to please, do things or make decisions, and really the end game was really trying to make everybody happy, it really was because I was uncomfortable with conflict or people not being okay with the decision that I had made, or and really once I became okay with people not being okay. If you're not okay, I'm okay that you're not okay, and we can talk that through, but in the end, I have to be okay that I am confident that I'm making the right decision and that I'm not going to please everyone, and that's okay.
Madison is joining us, a former Smart Girl of ours. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm an 11th grader at Venice High School, and I'm in the IB program. So it's a lot of advanced classes. It's kind of crazy. We have a lot of different projects that we have to do for each class.
What has been the most challenging, I just need to get it done, project you've been working on?
Probably our psychology IA, because we had to set up and design an entire replication of an experiment.
Oh, wow. Was it a team effort, individual effort?
Yes, it was team effort.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That is awesome. And then you had shared a little bit about yourself in coming here. Photographer for the Venice High School marching band?
Yes.
Is that right? How did you get into that?
Well, some of my friends did it, and I had a camera, and I was kind of bored on Friday nights. So I was like, hey, I'll join you, and I started taking pictures for them.
So do you play an instrument as well?
No.
Purely the photography side.
Not that talented.
She plays a camera.
That's right, plays the camera. That's actually much more difficult, you could argue, than everything else. And then also mentioned that you had spent time coaching gymnastics.
Yes.
So it was interesting because Melissa and I were talking earlier just about different roles you can take on with an organization. And I was wanting to ask you about the difference in being a gymnast and then coaching gymnasts. What shifted, what changed, how did you do it differently or feel differently about kind of come back on the other side and coaching some of your other fellow colleagues?
It was pretty interesting because as a gymnast, there's a lot of hard work and all of that. And then once I started coaching, I realized that keeping everyone in line was even harder because I teach a lot of little kids. So they don't tend to listen very well. Recently,
no, they don't listen. You don't just have to say it once. They're like, yes, I'll get that done.
Recently, we started to have to bribe them with stickers. So if you're good, you'll get stickers, and if you're bad, you won't.
Yeah, the shiny ones. I remember the puffy ones were a big deal. The scratch and sniff. I don't know if they still make them, but pizza was huge. So, yeah, stickers. God.
Positive reinforcement.
That's right. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I know that you've come up with a couple of questions for Melissa, so I'm going to turn it over to you now.
So, I was wondering, if someone is in need of medical attention and they refuse it, how do you deal with that?
So medical or like mental health?
Mental, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, we try to convince them that they need it. Try to work with them. Not like bribe them like you mentioned with stickers or anything like that, but just to try to reason it out, okay? But there are some instances where that's not possible. The other thing we'll try is we'll talk to their family member, people that they already trust, and see if they could maybe together we can convince them they need help. In the state of Florida, we actually have the ability to try to get someone help against their will if there's some sort of imminent danger, like they're thinking about suicide or they made a suicide attempt or they're saying they're going to kill somebody or hurt somebody. We actually are able by Florida law to intervene to try to get them help for that immediate crisis, to try to mitigate the risk and to help them with their mental health.
And that's Baker acting?
It
right?
is. It's called a Baker Act, yes.
And then I was just wondering, what was your motivation in creating the CAT Community Action Treatment Team?
Oh, you did your homework. Okay, so gosh, I had been working in foster care for a while. I was a supervisor, and so the case managers that would do like foster care, case management, worked for me. And then I went from that to a program where I worked with adults who had schizophrenia. We had a young man in our system who was an adolescent, 11, 12 years old, who kept having to go other places in the state and then out of state to residential treatment facilities for his mental health issues. They were pretty severe. And we looked at that and we said, we don't want him to have to do that. And so the CEO at the time tasked me with creating a program for kids like him that would enable them to stay in their community with their families and receive the treatment they needed without having to go to these different facilities. And so I used my experience working in that adult program that did exactly the same thing for adults to design a different program that focused on kids and their families. And so that's how CAT came to be. And it was Community Action Treatment Team is what the original name was, and we just shortened it to CAT Teams.
It's very neat.
Yeah.
And one more. What is your biggest addiction that you see facing the children and the youth?
I was actually I thought you were asking me what my biggest addiction was, and I was going to say caffeine, hands down. Caffeine is a problem for me, for sure. For kids, gosh, unfortunately, it's everything. So part of what creates an addiction is this flood of pleasure, endorphins, and other chemicals that create pleasure in our minds, our bodies. That's part of why we try things that are addictive: sugar, caffeine, gambling, drugs, alcohol, because there's this activation of the pleasure center in our brain. And who doesn't want to feel pleasure, right? Joy, happiness, that's what we begin to equate it with. Unfortunately, what happens in addiction is things change in the brain, and then the body says, you have to have that, nothing else matters. So it's anything, I'm afraid. I can't even really pinpoint one thing, because I'll tell you right now, what we see for people who are coming in, adults and kids, is they're using everything. They're using anything they can get their hands on. So part of it is accessibility. What are their friends using? For a youth, I mean, that's really young people. It's what are my friends doing? And, our friends offering it. Or maybe just we need something to get us through the day. We're tired. So we start with caffeine. And then when I was in school, we had these caffeine pills. Do you remember those?
Oh,
I can't remember what they were called.
No dose.
Yeah, no-dose, and then there was another one. And,
Okay, right.
and so you start with that, and then maybe one of your friends has something else, Adderall or cocaine, and they're like, hey, if you take this, you'll stay up longer. So it's anything is dangerous. That has any addictive properties. And the thing is you don't know, so you're playing Russian roulette with your body, whether you're an adult or you're a young person under 18. You don't know. I could drink alcohol and become addicted to it. You could drink alcohol and never become addicted to it. And all the other substances are that way as well. Many of them, though, do have an element of you become physically addicted no matter what, because our bodies change and then our body needs that drug. So it's all dangerous, and I understand why people pick it up and do it. Like, I get it in a way, you know, social pressures or just trying to get through the day or just trying to deal with life. But I can promise you it does nothing but make life worse. And that's what I wish for, that momentary high or that momentary pleasure. You get a lifetime of misery.
So stick with coffee.
Stick with coffee.
Stick with coffee.
But even coffee, I mean, I may end up having to stop drinking it.
Oh, start getting to like
right.
10 cups or, 10 espressos a day, and how many are in an actual cappuccino, 2 or 3. And,
right, because it does, whether I like it or not,
we're talking about
has an effect on my body. Yeah. It's going to probably start eating an ulcer into my
Definitely,
stomach.
right. It's an acid, and your body likes it to be more base or whatnot. Yeah. I'd be curious just to get your perspective on that question. It's a really interesting question. From your perspective, do you see certain concerns that you have for your colleagues in terms of addictive qualities of different types of substances or experiences or whatnot?
Well, some of my friends, I know that every once in a while they'll use drugs, and I'm very against it. So if I can, I'll tell them, like, no, you shouldn't do this. But really, it's out of my control. So I just try to kind of support them, but I don't encourage it. A lot of my friends do vaping. There's some marijuana involved, but I try to stay away from that.
It's a good choice.
Yeah.
I didn't do it either and still haven't. Because my mother, you're going to laugh. This is why my mother said as a little kid, if they call you a chicken because you won't do it, you tell them it's better to be a chicken than a dead duck.
I have never heard that. Have you ever heard that saying? No. All right, now, yeah, 2 newbies that saying. I love that.
It's hysterical.
I love
but
that.
It's stuck. And, you already know my control issues because I've talked about it. And that, like, being altered mentally doesn't match my control issues. So that's a difficult thing. The good news is it doesn't have to be, even after somebody becomes addicted, it doesn't have to be a lifetime of misery. There is hope through treatment and kind of taking that addiction by the reins and slowing it down and having the life you want.
Takes that strength, that commitment,
help from people too.
And help, right? Yeah.
Support.
Yeah.
Changing your life.
Yeah.
It's not
just
easy.
Changing your life.
I'm not saying it's easy.
I'll push my little change my life button now.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That doesn't work that way.
No.
Well, there was something that you had, I think, in what you'd written us, Madison, about changing, hoping to make an impact and change the community. Can you be more specific about how you see yourself being a positive change to the community? Is there something that you have in your mind's eye, either now or in the future?
Well, right now I've kind of started helping in a way because I lifeguard over the summer.
Awesome.
So I'm kind of saving the people there because swimming and all of that. So I help make sure they don't drown.
That's very important. Your skills as the gym coach now I have to figure out how to get them to do what I need them to do. With that, it's even more. It's like,
and
much more serious consequences.
With our tumbling, too, like we have to make sure that they don't do something to hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So we always have to be kind of careful. And with the little ones, we don't want them to overexert themselves. So you have to watch what you do with each group.
I love it. You're picking up all the soft skills at this age. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Definitely.
Well, before we wrap, and thank you both so much. I mean, it's just a pleasure speaking to both of you. I have to show our viewers, and I think I'm going to have you go. Your nails are fabulous, right? I have bare nails. You guys have amazing.
There
I don't know if
you
you
go.
see, there's like an aquamarine teal, and this is like an evergreen, like with some gold sparkle on it. I just love this. Thank you guys so much for spending time with us, and for sharing your perspectives. And I wish I could say I'll see you at SMARTgirl, but I know we've seen you at SMARTgirl, and you're going to be doing great things. And Melissa, thank you for all you do for our community, for advocating, and for rising to the challenge to meet the need and to be there for future generations. We
My honor to do it.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.